Hello, welcome to the third section of the presentation. As you know, the 20th century has gone down in history as one of the most turbulent periods, mostly due to two devastating world wars. The end of World War II, however, did not restore world peace, but sparked off yet another war that started for over 4 decades from 1946 to 1991. It was the Cold War between two former war allies, the USA and the Soviet Union, or the USSR. So, what was the main impetus that drove two most powerful countries at that time to the point that they actually turned their back against each other? The answer lies in the perennial conflicts of beliefs and social structures that had been firmly established in each nation. On one side we have America, a fit representative of capitalism, and on the other Soviet Union, a communist ruled entity. Each was convinced that the existence of the opposing regime would be a threat to the promotion of either communism or capitalism. Here's a brief look of what happened. After the Second World War, Eastern Berlin was occupied by the USSR, while Western Berlin was under the control of America, England, and France. The situation went on and reached a fever pitch when the Soviet Union made an unsuccessful attempt to blockade the area, forcing the others to hand over the control of Western Berlin in 1948. Threatened by the ambition of the Soviet Union, North Atlantic Treaty Organization was founded in the following year. Its counterpart, the Warsaw Pact, was later formed among Soviet bloc countries in Eastern Europe to tip the power balance. In 1950, Korean War broke out and greatly stirred up the tension between two sides as both were involved. Two sides of the war also worked to restrain the influence of the other by funding or supporting wars among the clan states, including Vietnam War. The dispute grew as both were engaged in an intense arms race for fear that the rival would stage an abrupt attack. And since the outcome of a head-on military confrontation would likely be the wipe-out of the entire human race, they signed a nuclear ban treaty in 1963 and later two agreements to limit the use of anti-ballistic missiles called the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. In the late 1980s, the Cold War headed for a major turn as Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev started a thorough internal reform of the political system which eventually disrupted the reign of communism in the bloc. In 1991, Soviet Union was dissolved, marking the end of the Cold War. The Cold War brought about significant changes not only to the world's political climate, but also several other aspects of life, such as the economy and security. For the most part, the war had detrimental implications, some of which are still prevalent today. First of all, it triggered the competition of developing sophisticated and expensive weapons, reinforcing disbelief and posing potential disturbance to world peace. Secondly, since it cost both sides of the war a tremendous amount of money to sustain the military, the economy of the two nations during the war was in a state of stagnation. Budgets for improving the people's quality of life were therefore substantially slashed. Thirdly, the war gave rise to a series of divisive conflicts such as Korean War and Vietnam War, claiming massive financial and human losses. Fourth, the war exacerbated the relationship of world nations on the basis of political preference, building up tension and ongoing rift. Lastly, on the bright side, despite initially formed to counter the acts of each other, military alliances such as NATO and Warsaw Pact work towards compromises of peaceful coexistence and restrictions on anti-ballistic missiles. A successful negotiation between the leaders of the USA and the USSR to stop the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1963 was one of the few times that the two sides managed to set aside their implacable hostility for the sake of humanity.